Thanks for having us, and thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I want to dive right in with a question that pertains a bit to the context for this screening, which is what I've been calling sort of a pop-up installment of Film at Lincoln Center's Scary Movies Festival. And in framing scary movies as a recurring program, we like to stress that it is not a horror film festival. It's a genre festival that is interested in what genres can do, how they can interact, and specifically all the different ways in which movies can be scary, and what that can mean, and what it can tell you about the movie and the intentions behind it. So I know, Greg, that in speaking about this movie up to this point, you've taken care to stress that you don't see it as a horror film. I know you've described it as a sci-fi thriller. I myself see it as kind of a social anxiety thriller.
I like that. I like that.
And
that's better, actually.
Because I have to say, I was so incredibly stressed out watching this movie.
Oh, thank you.
Both times. I mean, but the first time and on rewatch. And I think there are a number of film genres that are interested in fear, but social anxiety is maybe underexplored as sort of a fodder for cinematic thrills. So could you just talk a bit about how you thought about genre when you were working on the script for this film, and if that evolved over the course of making it at all?
Yeah, I mean, so we now refer to the genre of this film as anxiety chic. Is how I like to describe it. But initially at conception, it was just like a straight up, basically just like a comedy. And then I was listening to the score for this movie called The Double, directed by Richard Ayoade, and that's like a sort of tense, like Hitchcockian type of score. And I wrote the first draft while listening to that, and we actually got that composer to do this music like that score just sort of informed. I was like, oh, like maybe this should have more like kind of like Hitchcockian vibes. And sort of when I was kind of done with the like writing, and I was just thinking about the sort of visual like look and feel, I knew I just wanted it to feel, because like the idea of like the subgenre of people going to a house, it's like a familiar subgenre. So I just wanted to just do whatever we could to make the house and the movie look and feel as different from any other like people in a house movies possible, which is where the sort of like Suspiria influenced like horror lighting kind of came in. Yeah.
What went into constructing this very sort of Rube Goldberg almost sequence? So the narrative is both very straightforward and contained, but also very elaborate and mind-bending in the sense that we're not always called on to remember who's who with an ensemble of this size. How did you build the story and sort of build out these characters and their anxieties and their secrets? And did you have sort of a big map on the floor that you were...
Yeah. Pretty much, I just had like a diagram of everyone's names, and I grabbed Polaroids just online that of just randos really who just represented every character, and then I had a sort of diagram for every round of the movie. It was important that Shelby was a very anxious character because I'm pretty anxious. Shout out to some Xanax in this movie. I really just thought it was like I want to make people feel the way I just kind of feel like every day. Kind of. So that's really where the sort of pervasive sense of anxiety kind of came from, and we had talked about Shelby's anxiousness.
I'm so excited to have such a sort of representative array of the cast here with us.
Yeah. Hi, everyone.
And can we give them a round of applause because they did a fantastic job.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. It's awesome.
I was so dazzled by your work as an ensemble, and I think it's rare that an ensemble is called upon to know each other's characters as well as you all had to know each other's. If you had a primary character, you had to inhabit various other people along the course of the film. And so I'm curious about how you as an ensemble worked together, how you came together, as how you, Greg, found this group with such great chemistry.
Craigslist.
And just like, how did you make that the sort of magic come together? Big question.
I mean, well, we shot this movie overnight, so everything was night shoot.
One night. We just
Yeah,
shot
it
the-
was one night. We did it really fast. It was actually 18, which is pretty fast, actually. And before that, we had a week together, which was Greg's idea, and we all got to rehearse and watch each other perform certain scenes.
It's
Or
also very rare to have rehearsal time kind of on anything now.
totally, yeah, like that really made a world of a difference. We would like watch each other perform certain parts and like film it and then kind of watch it back and look at people's mannerisms and do what we could to like capture the energy of each other. I think that was the main goal, to not fall into like doing an impression of each other, but more so capturing like the essence of who each character was.
I remember at the start as well, Greg was so open and generous with allowing us to really have the space to explore, and then all the cast were also incredibly generous and amazing at just being like, we're all in this together. It kind of felt like film school, that we were just able to play, which is also kind of rare when you're shooting a film. It's often like the stakes are high, the studio is crazy, you're feeling really stressed out, but this was sort of like, let's just relax and like play for a second. And so that was great, but I remember one of the moments was when we first read through the script. We all did it exactly as our character, like our first baseline character, the whole way through. And I think that really set the tone for where we're starting. And then the second read through, we did it as the new characters that we would be following through. And so you could already get a bit of an idea of what each actor was intending when they created their first baseline character, if that makes sense. So it was a really unique process, but it was very rewarding because we got to do it in many layers together.
Yeah, and I feel like we did a lot of rewrites really during that week too. Like I rewrote based on just what I'm seeing everyone do. Like the idea of like Dennis says "bro" all the time. That came in that rehearsal period, and it was like, oh, that's a very easy way to just identify one guy.
I just couldn't stop saying.
And you,
Damn, bro.
you was just riffing it. And so now there's like 80 bros in the movie. The idea that Cyrus has trouble finishing a sentence. Nikki.
Yeah, that's just me.
Yeah, so that week of rehearsal at the house. Brittany, what do you think?
I thought it was such a special experience that we got to have that rehearsal period because we were all there to respect and watch one another give birth to our characters, basically. And we all had to respect each other's process, and we're all an ecosystem while we were creating this. So having that rehearsal process and getting to respect each other and was such a special and unique experience that I think made the film what it was. And I think when you have big budget films, there's a lot of pressure. Alicia and I were talking about that earlier, where there's a lot of pressure with a big budget film. And when you have an independent film, you really get to the root of the story and the root of the characters. And so it was such an authentic process. And Greg, it was almost like Greg was a mad scientist watching, what if I mix this chemical or this character with this person? And what if this person has this mannerism, let's put it in this character. And I feel like everybody has a specific dynamic that was very unique and brought, such a cacophony to life.
It was like a lot of us going up to each other going like, yo, can you do this scene for me? And then just like watching and being like, okay, cool. And then we'd like go and do it. But there was like a kind of like a creative messiness to the whole thing that like really kind of would be an overstep in any other film to be like talking that much about everyone. Nobody could be precious about like their process because you were like, I'm playing you. Like, how are you gonna do it? So there was like a freedom in the way that we were all talking to each other that like cut through any pretension. We were all just like in it together, which was really nice.
Do you remember we had to do our first scene for the opening of the film in front of everybody?
Oh yeah, Greg had to stand in front of everybody and
do
the jacking off scene in front of.
It built a lot of character development.
That was just for my own amusement.
Yeah, that wasn't even for the movie.
It's getting in you in the headset or the mindset of everything inside your head being visible to everyone around. I can't recall who's in Ruben's body when he says it, but at one point whoever's in Ruben's body says something along the lines of, do you think I'm a bad person? And I'm so, like, that really got to me, that line, because I think it's so much of the movie is about this tension that each of the characters has about trying to figure out, am I a bad person? Or perhaps they don't have that level of introspection, but they are, navigating in this very real-time scenario, sort of both how they're seen and how they're expressing themselves and where, the truth exists. And I'm just sort of, in a sort of a big picture way, I'm curious about how that process played out in terms of each character coming to terms with themselves over the course of swapping bodies. And so it's almost there's development within each character over the course of all these switches. And how do you sort of keep it coherent, both as a team of actors working on this and also as the editor who's tasked with making it make sense, even as these characters are taking in new information and learning about themselves and about these other people?
I thought a lot about this for playing Dennis at the end, because when you first see Dennis, he's kind of showboating and like really gregarious, and then at the end, he's losing all of his money. He's a trust fund kid, and he's like trying to kind of keep that secret from everybody, but that's like his main source of value. And so you like working with Gavin and Greg and trying to figure out like that arc of like this guy that's presenting one way and then like finding the cracks in that at the end of this guy who's actually this like kind of scared trust fund kid that like really needs his daddy's money. Like that's what he is kind of relied on. And now it's all going to be going away.
Yeah, and there was a moment where, I don't know if, I know you remember this, I'm sure you do, but where we like first do the initial swap, where we don't really know what's going to happen. And I remember doing it kind of one way, and then you had pulled me aside and you're like, what would Dennis feel if he like looked at himself and where he's like, what he's done with his life? And you suggested something that totally like made a switch go off, and it was like, oh, he's kind of really sad that he's just put a lot of his money in tattoos and like he's actually
like
sad,
looking cool.
But he fronts with a big ego to defend all that, and I think that's really what Greg's done in writing this, is like he shows every character's ego is their like leading thing, really, and we all have
their identity. They're like obsessed with their own identity, and then when they switch, it's like who are they now? And that's very relatable, I think.
I think it's also so poignant and current as a topic now, especially with social media, and that's so well represented in a character like Nikki, which is the idea of what someone's identity actually is, and the presence that they are projecting, and that through line that I think Brittany and I worked on a lot together, is, kind of symbiotically finding this concept that the grass is always greener when like in someone else's life, and that's what I'm supposed to look like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and this idea of we now project an identity onto people, and the way that people perceive it is also completely separate from our own experience of it. And I think it was so well then ingrained in, I think, Brittany, Shelby, Nikki dynamic of that kind of push and pull that society is sort of throwing. And then for us, I think as women too, it was a really unique thing as well. We were kind of like, we're of an age and a generation that really experienced that for the first time and grew up in it. And so a lot of our life is about comparison and about what you should be doing, what life's supposed to look like, and what everyone else is doing. And so it was nice to be able to, I guess, confront it in a completely different way and attack it with the idea that, like, what are we without this projection of an identity and our own ego? And yeah, very cool.
Yeah, the Shelby story really kind of came from just, Shelby was our main character, and the idea is like she's in this relationship that's sort of in crisis, and both her and her partner are essentially just consuming this diet of like artificial intimacy, like we all do, even like unknowingly. Like if you kind of stop and think about how much essentially artificial intimacy is out there in just ads, certainly social media, that all sort of says that, like, you essentially have to look a certain way and like be desired a certain way. That's kind of where it started. And Brittany and I talked about it was important to me that Shelby was biracial because I'm biracial, and any biracial person knows you sort of inherently feel a little just out of place, I guess. And so that seemed like a good starting point for Shelby. In addition to the fact that like her boyfriend is much more interested in screens than her, and so that's and so this is what happens, guys.
Did you find, I'm curious, this two-part question, did you find that you were bringing any of yourselves or your own experiences into these characters? And also, question for you, Greg.
You like that?
And did you
The
find...
obvious one is yes, as Nikki, she's a social media girly. And I'm over here just with like a social media account. I was like, Greg, that's not right. Like
That
Greg
is
had,
true.
like-
That is, yeah. I mean, that's
Greg had
true.
like developed, like created like a blueprint, like a concept of what like Nikki's Instagram was sort of like. And I remember over the course of like a couple of weeks, Greg and I going back, and I was like, Greg, no, like no. And it's like it was like so gross for me to be like, this is a part of my reality too.
I mean, yeah, no, that's it's like I feel like as a director, you're just surrounded by, and as a writer, you're just surrounded by essentially a bunch of talented people, and it's your job to filter everyone's ideas, like which idea enhances the vision and which takes away. And so, just broadly, from like something like I've never worn female wardrobe, right? So I feel like I'm not in any way an expert on like what someone wears. So like I was really just leaning on everyone to essentially like tell me. And then with something like social media, obviously Alicia has a much larger social media following than I do now.
Just wait.
Until tonight. So yeah, no, it's extremely invaluable, and yeah.
Would you say there was a cathartic or therapeutic element to making this film in terms of navigating these very real and very present anxieties that we're all dealing with?
I think there was. I found that to be the case. I mean, I'm playing a character in the beginning that's questionably he's kind of a villain in the movie, but like I didn't want to play him as a bad guy. I wanted to. When you're playing a character, you have to kind of like you have to like fight for them and go like find those places in yourself that could do similar things, or you have to. Yeah, so it's like you're trying to like admit these kind of ugly parts of yourself through the character, and so like that's, I don't know, it makes you like more, you have to like really engage your compassion, and you're doing that for all these different characters and like considering all these different perspectives kind of simultaneously while you're making the thing, and then you're also getting to talk about it so much with these like great open-hearted, very smart people. Then you learn a lot through that process.
I had like a small cathartic moment because I would take my tattoos home, and like I have some, but not nearly as many as Dennis, obviously. And people would look at me different when I was like back in my little small town near Portland, and
you designed most of your tattoos.
What's that?
You like designed most, yeah.
Yeah. The makeup artist and I, we worked together on like coming up with everything, and I requested like having the word homesick on my knuckles, which is kind of like a sad drunk tattoo by Dennis, I guess, or something. I don't know, but yeah, I mean that was just kind of an interesting thing, just in on the theme of identity or how people perceive us, just based purely alone on our outer image. It's so fascinating, like. Where did the saying go, like, don't judge a book by its cover? It's like the book has become this other thing, and it's, wild. I don't know what it's doing yet.
It's what's inside that counts.
Mm-hmm. Hey, yo.
Hey.
I want to make sure to leave some time for audience questions. So if you have one, we have mics that are coming around. You can just raise your hand, and I'll call on you. Let's see, I see one right here in the middle. Yeah, mic's coming from right.
I detected a certain Stanley Kubrick influence in the film, especially Clockwork Orange in the use of music, and I was curious if that was an inspiration for you?
Never heard of him. Yeah, for sure. Hey, thank you. Yes. Actually, well, Clockwork Orange was actually a big talking point specifically with my production designer and myself. That she did like an amazing job with the house. Like that house did not look like that. So yeah. And music-wise, yeah, like the kind of organ synthy thing. Yeah, I mean that movie rules. As does the Wendy Carlos score. So yeah.
I see one right here in the front.
Yeah, thank you. The structure of the screenplay is bananas now. We don't really learn who the protagonist is until the final minutes. It seems like it's just all antagonists up to then. Was
Interesting.
was laying this out difficult in the drafting the screenplay stage, and was getting people on board, financiers, getting production companies on board with your vision? Was there difficulty in getting people to see the way you were doing it?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Were there difficulties in originally drafting the screenplay and then in getting other people on board with the screenplay?
Oh, yeah. Certainly there are issues with getting people on. But like, I wrote this script back in 2016, and we didn't actually shoot it. We didn't actually get financing until 2022. Not for lack of trying, but I was sending out to people. I wrote it just to be as contained and doable of a movie as possible. One night, one location, 8 people, one set of well, technically 3 sets of wardrobe if you get into the body swapping stuff. But the sort of comment that I got a lot from people in the past was it was like the script is just like very confusing. And in the script when someone would swap bodies, like it would say their name like Cyrus, and then it would say in parentheses Dennis, like who is in Cyrus's body. And I get how that's very difficult to see, and I think there's something about seeing the people with the Polaroids being able to put faces to the names that I guess helped.
Dude, reading it was confusing. I was like, what? And then I watched Greg's other work, and I was like, I have to work with this dude. But like,
It's the same.
but reading it, I was like, I'm not totally sure what's going on.
Yeah, me too.
Well, and that's the part of the genius of the filtered color. Like, where did that device come from?
That was just, I mean, like the thing I thought about the most, like I guess directorially, execution-wise, is just like maintaining as much clarity as possible. Like I had seen RGB art that like Brooke has that RGB art, like that's a thing that exists that I was a fan of, and I liked the just idea of the metaphor, like anything you look at that was printed is really just 3 colors or 4 colors, and if you look at it through a filter, I liked how that was like a nice analogy, and I just thought, oh man, like. Yeah, we should get like. Initially, I thought it was going to be like a red filter going over the lens to, to sort of reveal who is who. And then we kind of came. My DP and I, Fletch, who's here, I believe. Shout out to Fletch. Fletch. Fletch had the idea to sort of mount the red light on the camera and like as if it's coming from the the audio. That was a good idea, Fletch. It was a great idea. People give me credit for it, yeah.
Hey.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry, what was the question? Yeah. Yes.
It's a great example of a script that I think comes alive in a visual interpretation that you don't.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have some questions in the back there. I see one. If the dark sleeve, if you keep your yeah.
Hi, Greg.
Hey.
Incredible movie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm curious because it sounds like the script was really, convoluted and clarity was such a big part of it, and you edited the movie also yourself. I'm curious how long the edit was for you after shooting and prepping it for Sundance, and what, like, if there were any discoveries in the edit, like, did you guys do reshoots, and what was the edit like for you, and did you get lost, and how did you kind of test the movie and all that stuff?
Yeah, we had. We edited for a year, so we shot this at the end of 2022. We edited more or less all of 23. Test screened it twice, which I found very, very helpful. Mainly, the test screenings pointed out essentially two issues, which was one, the sort of how the beginning needed to be tightened, like everything before the house. It was initially like twice as long. And there were a bunch of clarity issues at the end, like who ended up in whose body. As a result of those, we did sort of like a small pickup shoot with just red light stuff just sort of show who everybody was to kind of clean up that issue. But I got the Sundance call in November, and we weren't locked yet. I was really very shocked to get the call, and they're like, "Hey, we want to invite you to Sundance." I'm like, "Man, this is insane!" And it was in 2 months. So that last 2 months, really between we finished the film, I think 9 days before Sundance, and technically it wasn't actually even done. So the short answer is 1 year.
I think we can take one more. There's a hand right there. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hi, you said that the film originated as a comedy and then it changed based on multiple things, but I don't think you shared about where the original inspiration for the idea came from.
Two places really. One is, I was trying to get another movie going since I've been in LA, which at this point has been quite some time. And the other movies I was trying to get going were very large in scope. So I just gave myself a mandate. I was like, I got to write, one location, one night, 8 characters. And I love sci-fi. I'm sci-fi nerd. So I knew I wanted there to be a sci-fi thing in it. And so I just kind of had the image of off-kilter dude shows up with suitcase, and there should be something in the suitcase. I had just played the party game Werewolf for the first time at my friend's birthday party. It was very, very intense, and it felt like the stakes were much higher than they were. Everyone's lying and stuff. So that kind of gave me juice that a game could feel bigger stakes than it actually was. I came up with the body swapping idea. I was I thought, oh, that's cool. Maybe that's cool. And then when I just kind of came up with the what if 2 people die thing, that's when I was like, oh, that would be nuts. What would happen? And so around, and that was just how 6 months into the ideation, and that's when I kind of really, I guess, got excited about it. And then pretty early on, I was like, oh, it'd be nuts if the guy with the suitcase wasn't even the guy, if it was somebody else. So that was kind of in there from the, more or less from the get.
Well, that's just about all the time we have, but I think I speak for everyone when I say I can't wait to see what's in those other screenplays, and I want to thank you all so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
guys
everyone.
so much.
Thank you
Amazing.
so much.
Thank you.